In this live stream, I'm going to show you 20 pro tips for creating inspirational mood boards. If you're new, welcome. I'm Bradley, the CEO, owner, and head designer of the graphic design marketing firm BDesign. And our mission is to help you build your influence and impact in the graphic design world faster. Let's get started. Mood boards can be a great way to convey your design idea, win pitches, and get an early sign off. Follow this expert advice on how to create them. When trying to convey a design idea, to win pitches and get an early sign off, moods, feelings, and visions can be difficult to communicate verbally. So designers will often use mood boards and collections of textures, images, and text related to a design theme as a, as a reference point. Mood boards help others to get inside our heads as they show what you're thinking and feeling about a creative idea and your intended vision of a piece of work. That said, mood boards can be a pain to create, with many hours spent twirling image galleries, websites, books, and magazines looking for the perfect image to sum up your intended feeling for the work at hand. The right tools for creating mood boards can help, as can following tips on making your mood board process more effective, increasing your chances of winning the pitch. Let's take a look at them. Number 1, look beyond the digital world. When putting together mood boards, it's easy and therefore tempting to just use Google Images. But just because you're working on a digital product doesn't mean you have to stick to digital inspiration. For example, while working on the ITV news website, digital product design company made by many looked at design company made by many looked at copies of Veteran Pictures Post magazine in order to express how powerful and effective an image plus a caption can be for telling a news story. Real-world inspiration such as this can be a powerful convincer when putting together a board for a client. Number 2, take pictures when you're out. Real-world inspiration is all around us. So use the camera on your phone to take pictures of everything you see that inspires you, whether that's a bird in flight, great use of typography on a sign, or the brickwork on a building. They don't have to be great photos in the traditional sense. It's all about capturing thoughts, impressions, themes, and feelings. Tip number 3. Create what you include. Have you ever had the misfortune of going to a gallery exhibition, oh my god, a gallery exhibit, and it just not doing anything for you? You weren't touched by the exhibit or moved by what was on show, and other similar emotive professions. It's very easy to shove a load of stuff together and call it an exhibit. It's an absolute talent to curate threads of synergies between work and call it an exhibit. When putting together mood boards, think of yourself as a curator rather than a collector, and try to introduce meaning and threads from one image to the next. It makes it easier to interpret. Number 4, choose the right format. From the outset, establish whether your mood board is going to be presented in person or emailed to the client, as this will determine whether you produce an offline or online mood board. The distinction is not trivial. The two formats demand very different approaches. An offline mood board will generally be looser in style and require the extra kick and emotive spark that comes from it being presented to a client. An online mood board should be tighter and will generally need to work harder to convey a theme or a style. Number 5, build things up around a large image. Whether your mood board is electric or physical, the layout needs to give promise to key theme images. You can then surround them with similar supporting images that enhance the theme. It's a it's a trick. When someone sees a large image on your board in their head, they'll have questions about it, which they quickly scan the rest of the board to find answers for. If the place smaller supporting images around the large image, they should answer these questions by clarifying the messaging given in the large one. Tip number six, get tactile. When making a physical mood board, don't be afraid to get, well, physical. Traditionally, mood boards are made from foam board, although cutting this stuff up with a scalpel and spray mounting cut up images on it can be a pain, especially if you're not dexterous with a blade. It's extremely effective as a presentation tool. The tactile nature of cut up images glued onto board essences enhances the emotive of what's being explained. It may seem like a ridiculous, old-fashioned thing to do, but perception-wise, it's a real ace up your sleeve as a designer. Just be careful with fingers on the blade. Tip number 7, incorporate your board into your pitch. Generally, mood boards are considered to be separate to pitch or presentation work. They stand alone to show mood and tone. This is standard practice, but consider instead making them part of your pitch or presentation. Remember, you're trying to use subliminal visual tricks to make a client get it. Mixing mood board elements in with the presentation rather than bolting them on at the end can be an effective way of communicating your concept to the client. Tip number 8. Don't reveal it too early. It's important to make sure that a well-meaning project manager doesn't email an offline mood board ahead of the presentation, so the client knows what we're presenting. For an offline mood board, it's far better to let it all sink in to the client's mind as you showcase it, rather than come armed with lots of questions before you even start. Tip number 8 for creating inspirational mood boards is present your own mood board. In a similar vein, if your mood board is being presented to the client, try to be involved yourself. It makes no sense to have something that originated in your head being communicated by someone else, because That way, meaning can become muddled in a Chinese whispers type mess. Tip number 10, keep things loose. Locking an idea or a style down in a mood board can be detrimental, as the client will feel shoehorned into going with a particular aesthetic. Keep everything a little loose and don't make everything look too final. If you're using preview images from image libraries, don't worry about the marking on them. It all adds up to a, hey, look, we can change things, change this. These are ideas. Feel to the board. Tip number 11. Watch the audience. When you're presenting an offline mood board, watch the faces of those you're showing it to. Ignore any verbal client oohs or and ahs, but instead, watch their facial and emotive reactions. As they look around the board, this will give you a much more honest take on whether the board is doing its job and if they're reacting well or badly to what you're showing them. You have to put these people in your mood. So ignore their mutterings and watch their emotive reactions. Tip number 12. Hone your mood board skills. Employees at branding agency Lander as Associates use a form of mood board to showcase themselves to other members of the team. Individuals put together 9 images in a 3 by 3 inch grid that give their work colleagues an insight into what they're like, their interests, passions, cares, and worries. If you ever want to test out your mood boarding skills, try these out and showcase it to your colleagues. Tip number 13. Text it up. Don't ignore the power of a few isolated words on board. Well-chosen words can be fantastic showstoppers and give your viewer pause for thought as they have to mentally read what's in front of them. Big, bold words together work very well at creating drama, tone, and meaning for any project. Tip number 14. Make the theme obvious. Obscure references can be fun, but try to have a number of relatable items or touch points in your mood board. You want to let others in. So being deliberately obtuse will earn you no points at all. It's easy to fill out a board with a pile of bad references. It's much harder to be clear and use imagery to sell your vision, but it's worth the effort. Number 15. Aim to spark an emotional response. Think a little bit left of center. If you're presenting a mood board to a client, what would give them a genuine emotive response? Real-world objects are good for this. If you were inspired by the beach, bringing a shell, if you're if your eureka moment happened on the train, bring in the ticket. This type of thing intrigues people's brains and gains that all important emotive reaction. Tip number 16. Don't make presumptions. Expecting too much of the audience can be the difference between a successful mood board and one that dismissed as being too seriable. There's a danger of assuming they'll know what you mean. Chances are they won't. So if it takes a few more references, images, or textures to get what's inside your head into clients, then add them in. Tip number 17. Test your mood board. Don't forget to test out your boards before you send them off. It's not a game of Pictionary. So if your testing audience have to ask too many times what an image means or why it's there, then it probably shouldn't be there. And number 18, the mood board should be fun. The whole process of creating mood boards should be fun, a refreshing break from the often tedious tasks of the jobbing designer. If you're having fun, then it's a sure sign you're going about things If you're not having fun making mood boards, then you're going about it the wrong way. Tip number 19. Use mood boards to brief designers. Following on from the previous point, mood boards are a good way to brief a creative. Don't be afraid to go into detail. The mood board above was compiled of animator Tom Baker as a mood and style guide for creating cartoon versions of the Avengers TV series characters. And the Elizabeth 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 Montgomery from Bewitched. Instead of relying on one example of a character, several types were found in many different poses, which gave Baker a clear take on the style and direction of the piece. Tip number 20, and the last tip for this presentation. Speed up client sign off. Mood boards shouldn't just be for pitches. Consider preparing mood boards to show other similarly themed projects, websites, or functions before creating polished visuals. I'll know it when I see it is a phrase that most of us are similar with, but to hear this when finished artwork comes back from a client is gutting, signifying that it's back to square one. Using mood boards at different stages of the process can help you avoid this happening. Well, that's it for this live. If you got value and you'd like more live streams like this, then consider subscribing and smashing that notification bell so you get notified of our new videos and when we go live, which is every Wednesday. And don't forget, if you can dream it, we at BDesign can help you design it. See you next time. Bye.